Okay, 1.3 squares and square roots. This will be a fairly new thing for you. I want to say we touched on it at the end of last year, but I don't remember quite for sure if we did or not. So squares and square roots. Some explanations of this that you're going to want to understand is knowing the square of a number. Okay, and so essentially squares are if you multiplied a number by itself and you had a bunch of little blocks, that block would turn out to be a perfect square. So you might have like a 2 by 2 square, 2 long and 2 wide, okay, or an 8 by 8, 8 units long, 8 units wide, and it turns out to be a perfect square. So if they're asking for the square of 8, that's the same as asking what is 8 squared. Because if you think of area, it's side times side, or side squared. So if you have a square root, you're going to look for the side squared, right? Because it's making a square. So you kind of fit that terminology together a little bit. So anyways, if they ask for the square of 8, again, it's the same as 8 squared. 8 squared, 8 is our base, 2 is our exponent. 8 times 8, 64, right? So the square of 8 would be 64. If they'd ask you for the square of 4, that would be the same as 4 squared. Right? 4 on one side, 4 on the other. Right? 4 squared would be the same as a base of 4, an exponent of 2. 4 squared is 16. All right, so you can carry this over to a bunch of numbers. There's limitless numbers of perfect squares. The square of 12 would be the same as 12 times 12, or 12 squared. 12 times 12, 144. Right? So that's what the square of a number is. As you keep going, you can get into perfect squares, and essentially algebraically it's saying if you have x squared and that equals y, then the square root of y is going to be x. And this little sign here is a radical sign. And that radical sign means that you're looking for a square root of a number. 9, 16, 25, and like I said before, many other numbers are all perfect squares. If they were shown in blocks, they form that square. Factors multiplied to form perfect squares are called square roots. And those are called square roots. The radical signs used to find the square root of a number. Okay, and again, if you see this looks like a check mark. A lot of times we'll make that radical sign and it will extend a little bit over the number. So here we're looking for the square root of 16. Typically that will stretch over the number if you're writing it yourselves. Square root of 16, so it's saying, well, 16 is a perfect square. What number is multiplied by itself to make 16? Well, I know that 4 times 4 is 16. 4 squared is 16. So 4 would be the square root of 16. So the square root of 16 would equal 4. Here we have the square root of 64. What number is multiplied by itself to get to 64? Well, 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 8 is the same as 8 squared. So 8's used as the base 2 times. So 8 times 8, 64. The square root of 64, therefore, would be 8. Right? So we're going to look at square roots and a little bit of terminology tomorrow when we get into class.